cried last night. Like, I was so heartbroken last night. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they'll lose in 5 then.
I think, so if we beat them tomorrow, or if we beat them tomorrow, Sunday they come back to Tampa, we're not going to lose on home ice again.
Yeah.
That little dirt squirrel Evander Kane who wants to fucking insult our home ice, fuck him.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure me or one of my teammates fucking drone striked his cousins or something. So, after how he ran his mouth all day today, I'm buying a fucking Evander Kane jersey. I'm gonna buy a Evander Kane jersey and I'm gonna fucking wear it all next year. I hope next time Evander Kane knocks his skull out. Asshole. Say again? Yeah. Oh, is it good?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was feeding on here. It sounded like
Okay,
We're not
so I'm
live.
live. Can everybody hear me? Okay, awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish. Oh wow, that's weird looking. Cool. Okay, yeah. I was gonna start this off a lot more solemn. It feels like somebody is taking a crap in my heart because the Tampa Bay Lightning are now down 3-1, and I feel like we got Dick Long style out of a possible second victory. But if anybody can do it, it's Steven Stamkos. Also, happy week 3 of Prepper Month. You know, I feel like we as a guild and as a community, and also as a benevolent cult, have made progress in making sure that not only we are actively prepared for hurricane season and for anything that comes beyond that, but I'm starting to get to know people by virtue of Prepper Month. I'm starting to get to know people in the guild that I normally don't interact with, and it's not only building up good network opportunities for me, but good friendships. And you know, if you're paying guild dues and filling the coffers, and you don't have at least one friend in the guild, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? Come down, make some friends, reach out to people, let them know how much you care. But yeah, so happy week 3 of Prepper Month. Next week, we are going to be talking about bees, which I'm excited for, mainly because I live in a very rich apartment complex full of people that I dislike, and I feel like it would drive property values down surrounding me if I were to open a bee colony.
Is next week bees?
I think next week is bees.
For some reason, I was thinking it's pickles.
Pickles?
Yeah, it's like pickling.
Oh, next week is pickling?
Yeah.
Okay, next week is pickling, and the week after is bees. You know what they say? You can bee your pickle, but you can't pickle your bee. So, take that to heart. And yeah, so tonight, what's supposed to be interesting? For all my CCW people that came out last week, a couple of them are here. I am going to be, while Rab is talking about LARPing as a 13th century blacksmith without Count Zero's people coming to, alleviate them of all of their gold and riches. There's a sidebar joke to that, like, where, you see, like, these ancient monasteries with, like, virgins who don't defend their property and gold, and Vikings are like, oh, don't mind if I do. So, yeah, that's a thing. But, yeah, while Rab's talking about that, I am going to be getting with you guys and gals to be...
Yeah, I'll make RJ a grappling hook. I think he needs one.
I'm just going to sit here and look at myself on TV until we're fixed? Okay. Not narcissistic. I just think I look weird. Yeah, so with that, Rab is going to be talking about blacksmithing. Now, I know there was some kind of title to the talk, like Brokkr's Guide to Blacksmithing. Rab, stop LARPing. Just talk about blacksmithing, stop LARPing, and yeah, we're gonna get to it. So, now. You're live.
Oh, hello. And welcome to A Moment in the Shop with Rab, also known as Thursday Evening Guild Night with Brokkr and E-Tree, I guess. You guys hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you.
Cool. So I don't have like PowerPoint slides, so I figured I would just set up in the shop since I spent several days with COVID, which sucked. So I can just show you stuff and give you an idea of like how to get started on building various things, tools, maybe some basic blacksmithing. Maybe we can even do a demo, I don't know. But yeah, so here we go. So let's do a quick look around. This will probably make some people dizzy, for which I apologize. But and also the shop is a mess. Sorry. So basic tools. First of all, your anti-COVID equipment, aka not dying of mesothelioma. Something like a face shield and or safety glasses. And then if you are going to hit hot metal, you want maybe an anvil. You see the anvil there? Yeah, we can see the anvil. And perhaps something to get things hot, like this little blacksmithing forge. Look inside. So, and as you can see, if I stick something through here while this is on, whatever is in there will become very hot. One second. There's a tangle of cords, so I have to like keep walking around things. All right. Get me over on the other side here. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, there we go. So why would anyone want to do this? Why would you want to take pieces of metal and turn them into something else? Well, personally, I think it's fun, but it's also kind of a resilience thing, I guess, because if you can't, you know, get replacement parts, or you can't get a blade. Chris is cracking up at something. then, you know, you got to make them yourself, right? So the easiest, I think so, like John was asking, hey Rab, how would I do this with the minimum amount of stuff, right? Because not everyone's going to fill their garage with like blacksmithing equipment and whatever this other mess is behind me. And my answer to that would be, you don't actually need a furnace, first of all, because if you're just making small parts, you can actually use one of these little map torches, and these burn, these plus the propane ones, which are not quite as hot, but these burn really hot. Let's turn it on. That's a really hot flame, and it'll turn, well, it'll turn your metal things orange, cherry red, and yellow very quickly. Second, you don't actually have to go out and buy an anvil. Second, this is the crappy anvil that I keep next to my forge, but actually the most responsive anvil that I have is this 10-pound sledgehammer that I slammed into a log. Let's see if you can see that. So if I really want to beat on something, I just use this polished sledgehammer top with a smithing hammer. And it has a really good effect. So you really need 2 hammers and a torch, and then you're already hot working. As long as you can like mount one of the hammers on something. You guys want to try to make something? Or do you want me to talk
I think
about
that's a good idea.
All right, let's make something. Or do you want me to talk about All right, let's do something. Let's get it. Let's find a piece of metal that will not start on fire. These are coming out in the titanium. Oh, this reminds me of what I wanted to tell you. Or one of the things I wanted to tell you. So for some reason, everyone seems to think that you just take metal and you heat it up or whatever, and you bang it until it's in the shape that you want. And that's sort of true. But the thing is that metal is not metal. So this metal, which is just a mild steel, is like some little poker or 1/3 of RJ's grappling hook, used to scrape things or pick coals or something like that. And this metal is not the same as this metal. This is an alloy called 4340, which is strong as shit. I mean, you can literally land aircraft on this. That's one of the things it was developed for. So not only can it be tempered to a spring temper where it'll return to its shape, but it also has amazing shear strength and it holds up under twist and all sorts of impact and different angles of deformation, which not every steel will do. If you tried to do the same thing with this, it would probably just bend, but you would certainly break it pretty soon. And you can tell the difference in them between the weight sometimes too. So this 4340 is really heavy.
Rob,
Yes, sir.
where do I get metal from? Like, where are you getting this metal from?
There are a lot of places. So there's, for example, there's Metals Supermarket. I used to buy any number of car spring blanks about like this from Tampa Spring Company. I'm not sure if they're still around, but there's 2 or 3 distributors in Tampa where you can go and get different grades of steel. You can also salvage it. So if you ever look at the leaf springs under your car, those are usually made out of a really tough, it's a little bit hard to work, but a really tough metal called 5160. And it's very springy, it's very heavy. You'll hate yourself for trying to drill it because it takes forever and you'll burn up your drill bits. But it can be drilled. But it holds a great cutting edge too. So you can make a blade with that will stab a hole in most of the blades that you buy from Amazon or something like that. And that the leaf spring, in addition to buying it from the spring company, you can go, if you have a neighbor that you don't like, just jack their car up, take the leaf springs off, put them in your trunk, and then put the car back how it was.
Now, what do the numbers in the metal mean?
It depends. There are series, and I don't know what they all mean, but like the 51 series or whatever, or the 5 series is all a group of steels. The 4 series, I know. Well, so the 5 series is like a low alloy, high carbon. So that's where the 5160 comes in. The 6 series, I think, is similar. There's a good steel called 6150. I haven't worked with it that much. And then the ones that start with a 4, like 4330, 4340, and 4130, they're all chrome molybdenum or chromoly steels. So that's where they get their toughness, and they also tend to be somewhat resistant to rust and corrosion and stuff. So you start to know, like, you start to be able to guess like what's going to be in a steel by the number or the name that it's given. But you probably, like, unless you're a foundry worker or something like that, or an engineer who only works with steels, you're probably never going to have the interest in knowing all of them. So like what I would say is know about 2 or 3 that you use. So like the stuff that you buy at Home Depot that you weld is mild steel. So it's like 0.01 to 0.02% carbon. This is mostly iron. So everyone's going to work with that because you can make stuff out of it. So like, for example, I made this little. Maybe I should move this down a little bit. That's showing the top of the end of the air. I made this little roller contraption as an experiment to see if I could hot roll steel. So you get you get your piece of steel hot, and then you roll it through these Harbor Freight rollers, which, as it turns out, did not hold up. That's okay, because then you iterate the next time with something tougher. did manage to get somewhat of a bevel on a blade with these, but they wear out really fast. But anyway, so this is all just mild steel welded together, right? But you can take something like that where the mild steel is super cheap, construct something out of it. You know, maybe you make like a little guillotine chopping block or something, and then you can use that to cut your hot, expensive steel. So anyway, yeah, I mean, have a few grades of steel that you know about, 2 or 3. Maybe it's 5160, maybe it's 4130, which is what your bicycle frames are made out of. So that one is nice because if you find a cheap bicycle, it still has to be strong enough to hold people up, right? So you know that it's a reasonably tough, structurally tough steel. So you can use those tubes to make various things, or you can, you know, cut them, weld them together, smash them together, and make like a pattern weld thing. I think I'm gonna ruin this file. That's what we'll do. So, step 1. Get all of the.
Hey, Rob. Before we start, we have some questions in Discord, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you do a spark test of the metals before forging? Do
I do a what?
a spark test of the metals before you start forging?
Spark test, as in wait for them to start making sparks? Or
I don't know. That's just what the guy was asking. Fuck.
or checking to see if it's magnesium and I'm going to blow up my garage?
Hey, Crypto Derp, he's the one who asked the question. Could you clarify in the event discussion?
I'll try.
And then does Rab RJ, of course, being fucking RJ, does Rab have a welder like a TIG? I don't know what the fuck a TIG is, but
Yeah, I have a MIG welder. I'll show you in a second. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I do need to change my smoke detector battery. It's because it keeps going off. So I tend to know what the grade of steel is that I'm using already. So like if I was salvaging a lot of steel, which I actually did with this, but this was a lawnmower blade. I don't know if it shows up on the camera, but I would just for fun today, I forged it out and made this little, like, I don't know, Bowie knife, chef knife, whatever it is. But I already know that it's probably 1045, which is a mid carbon steel that's like 0.45% carbon. So it's like tough. It'll cut grass for a long time. It's not a great steel for knives, but you know, it was a broken lawnmower blade, so I used it. But most of the time, I'll have stuff where I've like ordered something, you know, like, and I label them. So this is 4340. It shows that. This is zirconium, so if I spark test this one, I might actually start the garage on fire because zirconium is pretty flammable. The titanium. This is actually a titanium rod. Really crazy light. Like you expect it to be heavy when you look at it. It's pretty light because it's titanium. But you know, this one too, like, so I guess what I'm saying is the way to test the metals is sometimes different. I think with the zirconium and the titanium, I would probably put an etch on them and torch them and see what color they turned. Because sometimes that can tell you. But if it was just like if I had an unidentified lightweight metal, I'm usually super suspicious and cautious because I've found, like, you know, radioisotopes and stuff. I don't want to start forging those in my garage and turn into a, you know, mutant or something. Speaking of which, the
we just gotta ask, Rab.
here's the smoke detector.
What are you doing that you're just running around into random radioactive isotope based steel rods in fucking Odessa?
It's funny you should ask, John. Did you know that your smoke detector has a radioactive element in it called Americanium? And that's how it detects smoke? So if you take it apart, you can actually, I mean, you wouldn't like die instantly or anything unless you swallowed it, but you can give yourself radiation poisoning with a smoke detector. But the thing is it's encased in a little shell that keeps the ionizing radiation or whatever from escaping, and it just lets smoke go through, and then it uses that to detect the smoke somehow. So there's actually a number of things that can have that. Like if you ever come across old medical equipment or something like that at an auction, they're not usually supposed to sell it to the general public, but it still happens. And if you have a business, you can buy almost anything. People don't ask very many questions. Then, you know, you could end up with like a whole bunch of radioactive salts or something. So yeah, I never assume that I know what I'm looking at unless, you know, I've checked like the weight and the density and stuff like that. If I'm salvaging something that's not a known thing, you know, like if it's car springs, obviously I know it's not, you know, going to create a nuclear holocaust. But if it comes out of a piece of equipment, a microwave, some sort of industrial sensor machinery or something like that, yeah, I would talk to my neighborhood chemist named Chudimon and see how we could figure out what it was that we were actually looking at.
Are you sure that you don't have radiation poisoning and not COVID?
Yeah, because I don't keep any radioactive stuff around. I don't like it in the house. I had an old magnetron from like a 1970s giant microwave for a while, and I kept it for two reasons. One, for a while I was experimenting with melting steel with it because I didn't know about microwave crucibles yet. But I later found out that some of those old magnetrons actually have a radioactive element in them. I don't think any of the modern ones do. But so I ended up taking it to the disposal center or whatever you're supposed to do with that stuff. Oh no, I threw it in the lake and then all the frogs have two heads now. That's what happened. Yeah, not really. Any other questions, Mr. John?
No, sir.
All right. Yeah, this file is chipped, so I'm going to kill this one. Make sure you guys can see all this. This will probably get loud. This forge is a brand called Forgemaster, and they have, I just have like this pet peeve about lighting routines for gas appliances. I've probably mentioned, like, when I went to, I stayed in the married student housing at Purdue University, and they had instructions for lighting the oven, and the instructions were turn the oven on for like 5 minutes and then open the door and throw in a match. Likewise, this thing tells you, close everything and turn the gas on and then click this little button. Well, by the time you turn the gas on and click this little button, it blows shit all over your garage. I mean, like, this rag would go flying off the anvil. My eardrums would be blown. So that's not how we're going to light it. We're going to light it a sensible way.
Rab, while you're setting up, everybody down here had the question of, is that those two desks that your forge is on, is that from IKEA?
No, these are little metal cabinets. I think they were at my mom's office at one point, and she threw them away. So I grabbed them, and then I stuck these metal plates on top of them. And then this one I built that's back here. All right, I will now light the WD-40 soaked paper towel. The WD soaked paper towel is lit. Now the forge is lit. Remember when I said, Mr. John, that metal is not just metal?
I do. Also, pardon me if communication between us is spotty. In order to communicate with you in Odessa, we have to mute the TV here so nobody knows what's being said down here. So it's a little weird.
Oh, my bad. Well, I'll just talk as if you're talking. Somewhere around here, I have a set of pliers that looks just like this. This one is lineman's pliers. The other ones, which have a slightly more aggressive grip on them, are called ironworkers pliers. And the difference is, if you try to cut a piece of like thin rebar with this one, it does not work. The pliers are cut and they die. But with the ironworker ones, they're a harder grade of steel, so it works. I guess forged and fire already sort of spoiled this, some of us, but. Safety glasses. Once this comes up to heat, like it will heat this thing really fast. So another thing I'll mention, this piece of metal that I just put in here is a file. So as you know, files are very tough steel, right? So I don't have to move the camera. So my face is on camera again. So files are very tough steel, right? Because they have little teeth and they have to cut through other pieces of metal. Once I get this hot, even after it cools down, this file is not going to be tough like that anymore. Because if I don't quench it or bring it down with this type of steel, if I don't bring it down from a glowing heat to room temperature, basically, I'm just going to be annealing it or normalizing it. So it's going to become it's going to be the softest that this steel can get. So already this file, is not a file that you would cut things with anymore until we heat treat it again, which we can do. Just keep that in mind, because this is a pet peeve, I guess, because I'll see people doing the robot wars and stuff, and they're like, yeah, I got some, I don't know, super tough steel blades or some titanium armor for my robot, but then they don't do any of the heat treatment process, so the steel is wasted. I mean, they might as well use mild steel, which is easier to weld. It would probably actually work better. So you gotta, after you do all the heating and working and everything, then you've got to quench, which is your initial heat treat, and then temper, which is to say bring it back up to some temperature between, say, 400 degrees Fahrenheit and, depending on the steel, maybe even 900 or 1,000, to draw the grain back down so it's not too hard and too brittle. So, and CryptoDerb asks, what do I use for quenching? That depends on the steel. So this file is almost surely something like 1085 or 1095. So it's a water quench steel. It's just a high carbon steel. So when you have a high carbon, when you have just a regular high carbon steel like that, water quench is usually your best bet. Others are oil quench. So if I have an oil quench steel, I'll set up a bin of transmission fluid, ideally with some kind of a warmer so that it's the right temperature going in. But the water quenches, they're pretty simple to work with. There's the iron workers pliers. Not actually what I'm looking for, though. Oh, here we go. So, before I start, an anvil is also a hammer. So whenever you hit something, your hammer, an equal strike is coming up underneath it from your anvil. The reason that's important is because if you, let's say you strike a bevel on something, if this is just at a flat angle, you're only going to have a bevel on one side. So if you want a double bevel, you actually have to put your object at the same angle and then angle your hammer so that the anvil and the hammer on two different sides are striking that object at the same angle. Other thing, you see a lot of people working themselves to death on an anvil, forging something small like a knife. Like, I get it. If you're forging something that's 2 feet around and you've got an engine lift holding it up or something, you might need a giant sledge or like a bunch of people with a sledge. But with modern fuels and the fact that you can put your heat right next to your anvil, you're probably doing it wrong if you're exerting that much effort. Just saying, someone. A lot of people work it, it's too cold. All you gotta do is put it back in the fire for a second. It gets warm. Hope the sound's not too upsetting coming through the speakers. You can use, it's actually a better idea to use tongs. This pair doesn't have a very good grip, but what I do most often is I'll just weld the workpiece to a rod like this. So you can see I already cut a workpiece off of this one. But then you've got this long rod as a handle for whatever you're working on. You have to keep grabbing it with your pliers and whatever.
Hey, Rob, could you do us a favor and speak up? We're having trouble hearing you.
Okay, yeah, that's probably because of the inferno over here. Maybe the microphone angle too. So what I was saying is I often weld the workpiece to something like this iron rod and then use that as a handle for forging. Now, if you don't have heat, but you want to see what it's like to hammer something and what the metal will do, you can melt down some lead pellets, or ideally, if you don't want to use lead, get some of this lead-free solder. So this is mostly tin with a little bit of copper. And you can just hammer on that, and it basically feels the same as hot iron when you're cold working it. So I'm not going to make a whole thing because I don't even know what I'm making, but this was kind of a wrecked file anyway. But what I will do is I'll do a quench, see how that works. This is going to be a redneck quench because I'm not using precise temperatures or anything like that. Still works. With this type of steel, it still works.
Rab, we just got to ask down here, what happens if you piss in the bucket and then try and quench the file? Like, can you piss quench the file?
Hold on, I'm gonna turn the Inferno of Death off so I can hear you. Say that again, Mr. John.
What happens if you piss quench the file? Like if you piss in a bucket and then use the piss to quench the file?
You probably get a patina on it. I'll show you another funny thing that happens. So because this was a rounded top file, you see what happens if you quench something that's asymmetrical. It gives you this curve. See how that's curved? So the reason that happens is because the steel's cooling off and it's changing shape as it cools off, and it ends up compressing on one side and stretching on the other side. But interestingly, the same thing happens if you're forging blades. So a lot of times you'll forge, you forge a blade along one side, let's say, and it curves as you're forging it because you're pushing metal out of the way. And then when you quench it, you'll get an even different curve because you gotta think about what the steel's going to do once it cools off. So it's kind of cool. Now, if we were gonna temper this, of course I'm not. I'm gonna rework it later, but if we had this quenched and we were gonna temper it, the quick and dirty way is, estimate and like put it through a torch or put it in here, but don't let it get glowing hot. But the safer way is get either a tempering oven or some kind of a gas kiln with a temperature control, or even I've got a cookie oven that for some reason goes up to 800 degrees. I don't know what cookies you cook at 800 degrees, but that exists. And so you can, use something with at least, a reasonable level of temperature control, and you can check it with a separate thermometer to make sure that you get your temperature right. And if you get it just right, then you'll get exactly the qualities that you want in the steel. And engineers have gone to all the trouble to write this stuff up, of course. So, if you're looking to make leaf spring for a car that'll actually hold a car up, then there's there's a formula for heat treating and tempering that already exists. But now, so Crypto Derp was asking about what do I use to quench? Well, you know, in the case of this steel, it's a water quench. This water is nice and warm now. Sometimes it's oil quench. If you get into like the D2 tool steels, which I usually don't work with these, but they're air hardening or air quench steels. So they act very differently from other steels. So if you're just finding stuff, or if you get a bunch of steel that isn't what you set out looking for, it's worth finding out what kind of quench that steel is made for, because depending on how much vanadium and molybdenum and manganese and all these other chromium, other elements that are in it, and chromium's a big one for the air quenching. So the stainless steels, you'll find a lot of them, the way to heat treat them is actually to heat them up and then just hang them up from a hook in the air, let them cool down, and they'll get harder over time. But sometimes it's a very intricate process, like you have to heat them up very slowly, hold them at a certain heat them, within a certain amount of time to another heat, hold it at that heat, and then cool it down in, one or more phases. So knowing the particular steel that you're using, I can't emphasize enough. It's really important. You can't just go and like grab anything and expect a good result. Now that said, one thing that is really fun, and I think useful, is you do something like this, but you get a bunch of junk metal parts, ferrous, a bunch of things that can weld together, and you kind of weld them together in a block, and you weld them to a stick like this, and it's probably going to be too big to fit in here, so you got to either use a different furnace. I've got a little canister furnace, or a little crucible furnace down here like this. So maybe something like that. But you can take a bunch of stuff like bicycle chains, files, broken bandsaw blades, etc. Kind of weld them up good enough in a square, and you flux them. So use something. This is 20 Mule Team borax. I just keep a little bit in this dish here, and then a lot down here. And when you put the borax on them and put heat on them, that lowers the melting point enough to make it easy to weld. So you end up with a block of chains and knives and saw blades and mild steel and whatever it was that you stuck together in that block. And then you just pound the hell out of them. And that is where I would, bring out the sledge probably, because you need some weight, or get a full-size sledgehammer and make a little trip mechanism so it just hammers for you. Because you need to whop it a bunch of times to get all of those molecules to intermingle while it's up at welding heat. So that's forge welding, but it's also what's called pattern weld, and it makes the thing that people often refer to as Damascus, which is not Damascus, but it is referred to as Damascus.
Now, what do you do if let's say the crap has really hit the fan here, and you're just scavenging for metal? You have no idea what type of metal it is, what its composition is chemically. Like, what is your first approach for dealing with this?
I would probably start with I would probably start with my first line of triage is maybe I would scratch test and just see, you know, if I had something hard or soft. Yeah, I might spark test to try to figure out how much carbon is in it. I'm not sure how accurate I would be at that. There probably are people who can like tell that, but it's just not been a method that I've used very much. Especially since some elements just spark like hell, right? Yeah, short term, I would rely on a scratch test, and then I would also try annealing and heat treating some of what I found. Now, if it was just little scraps or something, I wouldn't worry about it. Like if I found something like this and I didn't know that it was the back of a claw hammer that I had cut off, you know, I'm not going to worry myself over what kind of steel this is, because in this quantity, it doesn't really matter, right? But you know, you find a small, like a warehouse full of steel rods or something like that, you want to know what those are. So yeah, figure out the hardness, figure out if they take to heat treatment, figure out if they get softer if you anneal them. You know, so are they already heat treated, or are they annealed in the state that you found them? Annealed means the steel is relaxed and soft. So somebody heated it up and let it cool down very slowly, either air cooling in some cases, but usually cooling in a forge, or cooling, you know, surrounded by sand or vermiculite or something like that. So if you let metal cool down slowly, it makes it soft. If you let it, for most metals, and if you let it cool down very fast, it makes it hard, but potentially brittle. So figure out what state it's in like that. See if you can change its, and give it a spring temper. So is it good for, you know, does it have a mechanical property of springiness? Well, the way you find that out, first, see if you can water quench it. If it warps like hell and turn, you know, like you put it, you dip it in the water and it's a symmetrical piece of metal, and it ends up twisting itself into a pretzel, well, then it's not a water quench steel probably. So try oil quenching it, or try air quenching it, and see if it gets harder or stays just as hard. You can do chemical tests. So some alloys give off obvious signs. You know, if you well, especially you get outside of steels. I mean, if you pour an acid on something that looks like this, you know, depending on what color it oxidizes, or if it oxidizes, you can get an idea of, you know, is it a brass or is it a bronze, that kind of thing. The weight may also tell you. This is aluminum bronze, so I labeled it. But yeah, so I would start testing it based on its properties, and like, you know, I would probably have books already in the house that tell me like different grades of steel and what they're usually used for. So I'd have a pretty good heads up on what I was looking at, so that I could confirm it too. But even if I didn't have that, or if I didn't know any of that, what's really important is not which grade of steel it is or something like that. It's really, what are its properties? How hard can you get it? How springy can you make it? Can you set up some way of destruction testing it? Like, so tensile strength. Hang something between it, and set up a standard way of testing the tensile strength of your materials, which is their ability to just bear that downward force, or what's its strength against impact, against vibration, etc.
Now, going back to that file real quick. So the reason it worked, like the back end stretched while the other end contracted, was that because that was an oil quench metal?
Not in that case. Now, if it had been a perfectly symmetrical file, then that would have been a sign of that. But in the case of that file, is around here somewhere. The shape of the file was flat on one side and domed on the other. And I didn't go all the way through beating it out flat. So when I quenched it, it bent towards the domed side. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
So two-part question here. So if Rab knew what he knew, like if you knew what you knew and you had an apprentice down here at the guild who was just now getting started and like just tonight was immediately inspired and wanted to get started in this right now, but had like $200, how would you set them up?
I would say $200. You don't even need that. Go get a 10-pound sledgehammer. I mean, this is minimalist, but bear with me. A 10-pound sledgehammer, a tree stump that you can swipe from a neighbor's yard when they cut a tree down, right? And any one other hammer, preferably a fairly light one, and get one of these little bits of tin for $15 or whatever, and practice with this because there's no fuel cost. You can't burn your house down. It's a small enough amount of material that you just made me think like, well, what if you're on the second floor of an apartment?
I mean, like you own your own house, and like
Yeah.
you want one of those like that square forge thing that you have. Like, how much would something like that run? Like, I'm wholly committed. I don't want to do this minimally. Like, I want to get into this. How do I go?
I think this guy, I want to say this was maybe $400. And the little one that I have, it was cheap. I mean, it might have been 100. I'm not sure, if like 60 or something. If you look on Amazon for forges, they're not particularly expensive. This is a Forgemaster. I've had this for like, it has to have been 20 years. And it basically looks the same now as when I got it. Oddly enough, I've knocked a few, bits of insulation out of it over time, but they hold up forever as long as you don't throw them out a window or something. So I mean, that's, if you want to buy it, just call it $500 for your forge setup. You can also build it. There's no reason why you can't. You get a roll of K-wool, which is an asbestos-like material. It will hurt your lungs, so you don't want to cut it without breathing protection and stuff. But it comes in rolls like a blanket, and you just roll it around the inside of a metal tube, or concrete, or anything else that'll hold shape. In fact, you can build an oven out of regular bricks. You don't need fire bricks or anything, as long as you line it with K-wool, and then coat the K-wool with with a refractory cement of some kind that's made for that. Or skip the KO and just use, they have like refractory concretes that you can cast in place. And those have various costs. They'll probably end up costing you almost as much as just buying one, but you'll have also built the thing. And then the other thing to consider is your burner. And I'm going to go off camera for a second so that I can show you. All right, so you guys are probably familiar with the weed burners. They're basically a flamethrower. So this is one of those. Let's see if I can get the whole thing on camera. So like you hook this up to propane, and then it just like shoots this flame out. But this thing is a pretty good illustration of the concept of a burner. There's no reason why you can't build a propane burner yourself if you're going to use propane power. It's not the only kind of power that you can use. It just is fairly convenient. And I'll talk about coal in a minute too, and charcoal, because I've used both. But as you can see, this is just a tube, and propane comes up the pipe, right? So when this is on, propane is coming up here, and it's going to come out the end here. Well, when it gets lit, the fire is here, and it burns down into here, and that makes it start sucking air through this side. That makes sense. This Venturi effect thing happens. So air should get sucked into here, mix with the propane, and that's going to push the flames this way. So you're not going to have flames shooting backwards at you. That defies physics most of the time. You're going to have flames going this way. So if this is inserted into your little furnace, and you light it over here where my fingers are wiggling, air is going to draw into your furnace. You may need a little bit more air than what this allows for, or you may not. It depends. But you can have an adjustment for that. And that's going to shoot fire out into your tube full of KO or your metal box full of refractory cement and KO, or your brick oven that is lined with something that's rated for 3,000 degrees or however hot you want to get it in there. And for that refractory stuff, pottery supply stores are a godsend because they have to get things really hot, and a lot of people build their own kilns. And so that you can find a lot of stuff that's good for metal foundry amongst pottery folk.
Now, what about if I don't have access? Like, okay, society has collapsed. I have like a campfire or some charcoal and a hammer. Like, can I still get the job done?
You can. The first forge that I ever built, actually, when I first built it, I did not know about, well, I disbelieved refractory materials because I was like, fuck this, I'm like a teenager. I don't know where to find refractory whatever. So I just built it out of concrete block and red brick. And I used charcoal. And you read all this stuff in history books, like people could not, forge steel with charcoal. The hell they couldn't. I guarantee they did, and you can. You just need you need good airflow. So if you have electricity, the way to do it is you get your shop vac and you put it on reverse and plug it into a little tube, and that tube goes out to some little pipes, and those blow to the spot where you want the fire to be really hot in the charcoal. And not only will you get your steel up to forging and welding heat, but you can actually melt it. So you can get it very hot. And then by the same token, if you put coal in that same forge with that air blast going in, it's just hotter than hell. I mean, what ended up happening with that one, and I rebuilt it with refractory, but the concrete, of course, started crumbling. It turned back into powdered lime, because that's what happens to concrete at a certain temperature, right? Is you just turn it back into powdered oyster shell. So yeah, that's you don't have to have propane. Many different types of gas work. You can actually use this same type of burner with vegetable oils. They're not quite as I don't think they burn quite as hot as propane. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, I'd probably have to look up the temperatures. But you can burn vegetable oils. You can make your own. Oh, hey, Chudimon's waving at me. Is it fair to say? I'm going to assume the answer is yes. If it's fair to say that we have an unlimited supply of plastic that can be mined from the earth, even 100 years after the apocalypse, then I dare say you're never going to be short of fuel. And even if you need propane or gasoline or something, or diesel, something like that, you can make it, because if you burn plastic, or if you bring plastic up to, and in fact, not just plastic, but almost any carbon rich material like mulch, wood, leaves, everything, you bring them up to temperature in a reducing atmosphere, which is to say there's not enough oxygen to burn, so you're just turning them into charcoal. What you get is charcoal, but you also distill off natural gas. And that natural gas can be refined in different stages. And I've seen people do it with methods as simple as like bottles hanging from like little pipes and stuff. You can make diesel or even lighter gases just by distillation that way. So I mean, you can get fuels if you want to set up a plastic mining post-apocalypse fuel center or something. But beyond, without going to that trouble, yeah, you can make or find charcoal from the burned neighbors' houses or whatever, and forge your crossbow bolts and cast your cannonballs using that.
Now, you were also talking about charcoal and using briquettes and stuff like that, as opposed to propane. Do you want to expound more on that? Like, can I build a campfire and stick the piece of metal into the coals of the campfire and get done what I need to get done?
Yeah, if you pile, what I would do for that is, because here's the thing, to get your campfire hot enough, I mean, to get an open fire like that hot enough to forge steel, it is a bit of a feat. So like you can do it, but it involves like aiming a leaf blower at it. You know, now it's really hot. You're blowing on it with a leaf blower, but you also might be blowing hot, you know, coals across the forest and starting people on fire or something like that. So two ways to go about this. One is if you can contain that, build some rocks and soil and stuff up around that charcoal fire. That's one way. I mean, if you want to go the high tech way, but there is a low tech way. So people did in fact manage to forge things at A, at lower temperatures, and B, with, you know, without the modern tools and stuff. So if you can contrive a mechanism that draws air and really sucks air in, like through the bottom of your charcoal and earth, you know, like, and rock oven, whatever it is that you make, that drawing effect can get hot enough to forge on. I dare say your first attempt may be underwhelming, but you can probably get a glow out of it, and then you start adjusting the draw. And a lot of times, surprisingly, I guess, kind of what you have to do is choke it down a little bit, but it's got to be drawing air in so that it's unidirectional, you know. So you want the air going in, say, through the bottom. It would be great if it goes by kind of a roundabout path and it can preheat the air so it's not cooling your fire down. Then goes through your charcoal, and then, you know, out through the chimney or whatever. And there are actually some really brilliant sort of can't remember what people were all doing with them, but a lot of people were just making cooking stoves this way. But basically, they're just a metal box with a really powerful draw. So once you light a fire in there, it becomes like a vacuum cleaner, basically, because that fire is thirsty for air. So it's sucking air like crazy through you know, this pipe, gets preheated, it goes through the charcoal, and then it, you know, goes out the top or whatever. And then a lot of times, you know, people are just frying eggs on top of it or whatever. But you can use the same concept, and as long as your material is one somewhat refractory, like you don't want to lose heat to the material. So if it was just a cast iron stove or something, right? A lot of the heat is being sucked out into the iron and radiated into the room. That's not what you want. You want the heat of your flame, of your fire, to bounce back and just keep hitting that same area. So when you look in this guy, all of this white stuff in here, you know, think of that as like asbestos or something. It's not. It's alumina or perlite or kaolin or stuff like that. But it's stuff that has essentially no thermal conductivity. It reflects all heat. So that's the ideal inside, and it's very surprising how hot things get if you can get a material that will do that. And there are a few common materials. Garden perlite, the stuff that looks like styrofoam, and you buy it. Oh shit! I'm looking at a bag of it over there. You buy perlite at the garden store to make the soil lighter or whatever, and absorb water and drain and make microbes grow and stuff like that. Well, perlite reflects heat quite well. It's actually a volcanic ash. So, it came out of a volcano and it's still here. So here we go, it reflects heat. So if you can, get something like that, mix it into mud or clay or something like that, and coat the inside of whatever it is that you're surrounding your fire with, you have a much better chance of getting a high heat. And even like I was showing you the torch before, if I take that torch and I just heat up a piece of metal, maybe it takes 2 minutes to heat the piece of metal up. But if I put that same piece of metal in the bottom of a refractory crucible, made out of one of these refractory materials, things that reflect heat, it will take half the time or less to heat up the metal, and I'll be able to get it hotter because the metal inside the crucible can actually get hotter than the flame, I guess. Like the flame is only so hot, right? But it's giving off BTUs, heat units. And if those BTUs are staying in the area for a while, then, it's great that the flame is nice and hot, and a map torch is really hot. But it's going to be a whole lot hotter, a whole lot faster inside a refractory chamber. That makes sense.
Now, what about smelting and creating your own metal and creating the canvas in which, let's say I'm working on something that needs to not be rod shaped. Is it possible to home smelt or home create your own combination of metals?
Yeah, it is. That's actually why I have the zirconium rod. Is at some point, I know someone who's familiar with nuclear power probably thinks that I have evil intentions, but no, I'm not making a home power plant. Excuse me. But some crucible steels historically were high in zirconium and vanadium, relatively speaking. So if you wanted to reproduce techniques from 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago without having to find exactly the same mine that the people were using, someone has taken a look at these artifacts and put them through a what's it called, the thing where you burn everything up, and it shows you the colors and what elements are in it. Chudimon does it. COVID brain. Anyway, look that up on Google. You start shit on fire and
Like a crucible?
no, it's chromatography. There we go. So someone's done the chromatography on it, which you can also do. I think it's probably a little more complicated than you'd want to do if we were really in deep shit, but eventually that's how you restore science, is with measurement equipment like that. But chromatography just shows you exactly what elements are in something, and how much of them are in the item. So we know about some of these old crucible steel blades or Wootz blades or something like that had Damascus patterns in them, that the original steels had vanadium, maybe silicon, zirconium, and some other things. And that gave them some of their interesting properties. So I you know, I keep metals around in case I want to try alloying something. So you can absolutely do it. You just have to be able to you have to somehow get everything hot enough to melt, you know, basically to a liquid melt, without also burning out, you know, some of your elements. Or if some of your elements are going to burn out, you have to add enough in so that that loss is accounted for.
What about like just melting down aluminum cans and putting it into, you know, casting it into like a block or something and using that to
yeah, super easy.
make
Hold
something?
on. Yeah. So that's all you need for that. This is a little carbon crucible. You could actually, for aluminum, I think all you would need technically is this and the map torch for $40 at Home Depot. And that's already, I mean, this is already a very resilient material, and it's going to hold the heat in there. So I think you could probably just point a torch in here and melt aluminum down. But if not, then you get one of these little canister forges, or you dig a hole, literally dig a hole in the dirt and pack perlite around this thing. And then I guarantee at that point, you're able to melt aluminum. I mean, it's not going to be a problem. Talking about aluminum cans, there might be some alloy that you can't melt, but yeah, that's what you can do. And that's how I made Charles the axe. I know some of you have seen that. It's around here somewhere. Let's find Charles the axe. It's not the most beautiful example of a casting, but the point of this one was just to see if I could 3D print the molds and then inject, well, originally I was going to do lost 3D print casting. That was just a mess. So I ended up making 3D printed molds, which they don't have to be 3D printed. They could be carved out of wood or made out of anything. And then I poured hot wax into those molds, took the molds apart, painted some plaster of Paris with, you know, sand for grog onto the wax. Let that dry, made a few more layers, surrounded that in whatever my casting medium was going to be. In my case, I just used pure plaster of Paris. And then I just poured hot aluminum bronze in there. And it made an absolutely shitty finish, but it's a pretty tough axe. I mean, I do yard work with it. It's never broken on me. Holds a pretty good edge. It might be as hard as the steel for the lawnmower blades. I'm not sure.
Now,
One bends.
we have some questions in event discussion.
Lawnmower blades.
RJ wants to know, what is your opinion on buying the gear from your garage at Harbor Freight? Would it result in it, if we're lucky, killing him?
It depends on what you buy from Harbor Freight. I like some of the Harbor Freight stuff. It breaks really easily.
And it's built by your kids.
Yeah, but you get to where, like, once you have a welder, and I would buy a US brand welder, and this is just me. I said I would show the welder. This is my little Lincoln TIG welder. I mean, not TIG, MIG welder. MIG is short for metal inert gas, but most of them also will use a filament that has like a rosin core, not rosin, but stuff in the middle to create the inert gas. So anyway, I would buy a real brand of welder, not like the one on Amazon that's called like LOL happenstance brand or something, like where they just mash words together. And that's simply because I have a preference for not being electrocuted after several experiences with electrocution. And yeah, so get a nice welder. But then beyond that, if you get something that sucks, like let's say you buy a you have a sucky, like I've got a little 1-inch belt sander over here, and it just finally broke. I mean, I've had it for years, but big whoop, because you've got a welder. So if there's any part on an object that you bought that is too weak for your use, you just copy that part with stronger or thicker materials or forged materials, or whatever you need, because they're most of the time they're either sheet metal. That's the good ones are usually sheet metal. The horrible ones are usually this like cast, ductile cast iron or something like that, gray cast iron. That's what this one was that broke. Or maybe not even ductile cast, maybe just plain old cast iron. So sometimes it doesn't matter if the thing that you buy is terrible, because you may not need it to be that tough, or you can just make it tougher. So I guess that's my answer to that.
Okay. Crispy the Mole Ninja wants to know how much for a Rab Santoku, and I guess that kind of opens up the doors for if somebody in the guild wanted to buy a Rab knife, would you be available for commissions?
I don't know. Maybe. I haven't thought about actually selling blades in a while. I used to make swords and sell them, and I would spend like a week in the shop polishing these freaking things to a mirror shine. I'm probably more efficient now, but yeah, I'd have to think about it. I might make some for fun though. Maybe I'll make some guild prizes. How about that? And then if you win a hacking competition, you'll win a Rab knife, axe, hammer, something like that.
Okay. Of course, assuming you hook the triumvirate up first, because this is a benevolent, democratic People's Republic. Trey wants to know if there is any books, videos, YouTube channels that you would recommend for those of us who saw your just saw your talk, and like everything else that we get into, be it drones or whatever, immediately and compulsively want to get into the hobby and drop money on it.
Yeah, so YouTube now is like a gold mine for blacksmithing, anything to do with like maker stuff, tool making, things like that. I mean, honestly, it's dangerous. Like you'll just start buying shit, and I don't know, like I started watching car mod YouTubes, and I'm like making parts for my car now. So yeah, particular channels, I don't know what any of the names are. I can send a list, but my subscribe list is probably like 500 channels long, because I watch so much stuff. But I'll post a list of like channels that I think are fun for blacksmithing. And one thing to look for when you're watching them is look for the people. I know there's one where it's just this like kind of lanky guy. He reminds me of someone. But anyway, he's just very relaxed while he's forging, and that's what it should look like for the most part. Like, and then you'll see some others where they're like hunched over and they're shouting and grunting and stuff, and sparks are flying everywhere. That's not usually what it should look like when you're, especially if you're forging just normal sized objects. So, but I might send a few of those too, just for the contrast. But,
there's something genetic with me as a Slav that tells me, and my ancestry, you must get out there and start blacksmithing. RJ wants to know, what is the purpose of the sandblaster behind you? And he has a whole bunch of very strange questions as what you can do with it that I'm not going to ask because I'm a member of polite society.
Yeah, so this is an industrial sand carving machine. So it goes a level beyond a sandblaster. I've used it for metalworking because you can put zirconium sand and silicon carbide sand and all kinds of stuff in there. So you can etch through metal if you want. Originally, I bought it to make etched glass and tile and stone and stuff. And so, basically you can put a template of resistant material over whatever it is that you want to etch, and then, blast the sand over it. That gives you a pattern, and you can do that multiple times to get different levels of depth. And this type is it's just a higher quality and more controlled, much more controlled than like the hardware store sandblasters. You have multiple levels of resist coming out. It automatically recycles the sand, so you never have to stop going. You can operate it for 24 hours, that kind of stuff. So it's a great little machine.
Okay. Last question before I pass back to you for any closing remarks or anything else you want to close out with. So within the temple, we've heard of a hackathon. What are your thoughts of a forgeathon? You walking people over the course of maybe a weekend or a workshop. With us showing up with supplies and you showing us how to make something to help us kickstart.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I probably need to clean the garage out a little bit first, but yeah, especially like once that's done. And honestly, like if we named a date, I'd make it happen. I'd just throw a bunch of old furniture and stuff in another shed or something like that, or whatever. But yeah, we could do something like that.
Okay, yeah, because usually with talks, I kind of get excited about it for 2 weeks and then it peters off, which is why I haven't dropped $2,000 on a drone yet. But blacksmithing has been a thing that's been on my radar for many moons, and I would love to freaking get into it. And I'd love to maybe see if we could do something with the temple for it, because we're not just like a cyber thing. We are a cult of very weird fucking people. Last question. Would you be willing to, at some point, tell the Admiral Farragut story with the punchy pit? Just because it's amazing. Oh, yeah. Do you want me to tell it now? Only if you're comfortable with it. Oh, yeah. No, it's no secret. So anyway, I went to Admiral Farragut for 2 years. It was supposed to turn me around. And I guess, yeah, it was the second year. Really,
pretty nice guy. He had a short temper. He was still teaching there until just pretty recently. But George Nicholson, we called him Commander Nicholson. He maintained like this place that we called the science backyard, and it was full of bamboo and stuff. They've since, for some reason, cut all the bamboo down. And then one of my other favorite teachers there, he would always tell us Vietnam stories, and I have his book. It's one of my prized possessions, but he would tell us the stories that he ended up writing down in his book. And it, some of them would describe these Vietnam era traps that they'd catch people in, and you'd fall into the punjies, or you'd have the swinging arms come out and spike you or whatever. Or you'd hit a trip line and grenades would go off. Well, I didn't have any grenades, but I did have bamboo, and if you have bamboo, you have spikes. And if you can dig a hole, I mean, you've got punji traps right there. So I recruited some friends, and we built a base in the science backyard and thoroughly defended it. And right in the middle of the path, where you had to go through to really get anywhere. And we knew to go around it, but I said, well, let's dig a pit here. And so we dug a pit, and the soil was pretty good, so you could dig a big, a deep pit back there. So it was probably 4 feet or something, a little wet at the bottom. And so we're digging this pit, and I kid you not, it was, I remember it was kind of overcast, but there was a crack in the clouds and a beam of light came down. And I heard a voice, and it said, "Rab, don't put the punjies in the pit." And I said, well, I guess let's not put the punjies in the pit. And
It was the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit told you not to fucking kill this poor guy.
So everyone agreed. We didn't put the punjies in the pit, although we really wanted to reproduce the whole effect, because we thought it would be great. Honestly, we thought it would be hilarious if one of us forgot about it and fell in the trap. That was kind of part of what we were trying to do. And then, and you'd have to go base running and all this kind of stuff, jump over it. Anyway, so we've got this pit, and we've wove up the bamboo leaves and scattered stuff on it. So you couldn't see that there was a pit there. And I set up a thing where if you did trigger the pit, it would also make one of the, you'd probably get hit by 2 or 3 of these swinging arm things that just came out and whacked you on your way there. So I'm surprised anyone ever got to the pit, but they did. But anyway, I set up another one of those, but this one knocked a bunch of bricks and concrete blocks into the pit. Well, so my understanding of it is that Nicholson fell into this thing. And we, then of course we were horrified. Like, how could this happen? We only dug a pit and hit it from sight, and then somebody fell in it. Why did they do that? Well, we weren't, we were in middle school. So anyway, I think he went on a leave of absence for a couple of weeks, but when he got back, they stood me up stood me in the center of a room, and all of the teachers who were, they were military officer teachers. They all had ranks, and they were commanders and admirals and all this kind of stuff. And most of them had been in the military, including Nicholson. So you really didn't need that, but whatever. That's what happened. And so anyway, they all took turns shouting at me, but then the one who just couldn't And he wasn't injured, by the way. The rocks did fall on him, but he was pretty tough. Only one of them couldn't keep a straight face, and he just kept breaking up. Well, and they were supposed to be yelling at me and dressing me down, but I don't know, for some reason it struck them as humorous. So anyway,
and that's why we love you. You'd think that like these people would be like, oh wow, this guy is hyper intelligent and highly capable of building stuff. Maybe we should do something with him, but it's nope. You don't fit inside the square hole.
that was only event X out of literally like every day. I just, like I think around 8th grade is when I figured out how to keep all of my ideas in my head and not do them immediately. But when I was at that school, one of the first things I did, like they had a canteen where you could buy stuff, and I was like, oh shit, they sell dental floss here? Wait, I can get extra coat hangers? And they're just like looking at me like, what is this kid doing? And I'm buying dental floss and coat hangers and like an extra fan, because they sold these window fans. There was no air conditioning. So it was a boarding school, by the way, so you lived there. I'm buying all this stuff. Well, 2 hours later, I have the entire dormitory rigged where if I pull, I had these little like handballs tied to the end of dental floss, and I could pull them and open doors and turn lights on and off and all this stuff. Turn fans on. Later, the fans became part of little mechanisms that would turn on when the door opened, and it would fling underwear at whoever was coming in to inspect the room, because they had these asshole upper division students who had to come and inspect your room, and if you didn't have hospital corners on your bed, they tipped all your furniture over and broke everything. So I was like, well, fuck these people. They're gonna get underwear in their face. So I broke the blades off of a fan and made an underwear launcher that when they opened the door, it would throw underwear at them. I was nowhere in sight. I was in class while they were doing this. So it was just stuff like that all the time. And that is why I did not graduate from that school, I'm pretty sure.
Well, we find you a treasure, Rabbit, and we are very grateful for the talk. I'm gonna get with you, the triumvirate. Actually, the triumvirate will get with you offline as far as maybe doing a little Viking grown-up summer camp. But we hope you have a speedy recovery. Is there anything you want to top off with, or anything you want to finish with? Any random manifestos you have to read off?
No. I think I'm good. I appreciate everyone's patience and hope you enjoyed the talk.
Trey was saying that maybe it's best you got COVID because we didn't know how Paul would feel about you firing up a propane forge down here.
Paul would like it just fine.
I think Paul would like it just fine. It's a funny story. The first time I went to your house, and Paul had warned me about this, about the big fucking ibex head that just kind of dead stares at you. I hope that in spite of the remodeling, the ibex head stays.
Yeah.
All right, Rabbit, thank you. We salute you, and we are grateful that you are one of us.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a delightful evening.
Oh, we lost you.
You did?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear us, Rep?
Yes. Have a delightful evening.
Okay. For some reason, I cannot hear you, but.